Hey, if you're sitting there wondering whether dropping this much cash on a solar setup is really going to pay off, I get it. You don't want to waste money on something that looks good on paper but doesn't actually work in your garage, backyard, or off-grid cabin. The last thing you need is a stack of panels that either underperform when the sun's not directly overhead or end up costing you more in extra wiring and mounting headaches. So before you click Add to Cart, let's talk about whether this Renogy 2400W bifacial system is the right move for you or if you're better off sticking with something simpler. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. Now, the big selling point here is bifacial power, which means these panels don't just soak up sunlight from the top, they capture reflected light from the ground too. That's not just marketing fluff, it actually matters if you're mounting them over a light-colored roof, concrete, or even white gravel. In those setups, you can see real gains, sometimes up to 15% more output on a clear day compared to a standard panel. But here's the catch, that extra power only shows up if you've got the right surface underneath. If you're bolting these to a dark asphalt driveway or a shaded deck, you might as well stick with a regular monofacial panel because the bifacial boost won't kick in. Then there's the N-type cell tech. Renogy's using 16 busbar cells here, which are supposed to degrade slower than older designs and handle heat better. That's great news if you live somewhere hot or plan to run this system for a decade without swapping panels. But don't expect miracles if you're in a cloudy climate. Those efficiency gains are still tied to actual sunlight hours, not just the cell type. The dual module design is where things get practical. Each 400W panel splits into two independently operating zones, so if one side gets shaded by a tree or vent pipe, the other side keeps pumping out power. That's a real-world feature that saves you from buying extra microinverters or rewiring half your array just to dodge a shadow. If your roof has weird angles or obstructions, this setup gives you more flexibility than a rigid single-output panel. But let's talk about the elephant in the room, the price tag. At 2400W, this isn't a weekend DIY project, it's a serious residential or small off-grid system. Renogy's pushing the idea that you can simplify your setup by going all in on these big panels instead of piecing together smaller ones. That's true, but only if you're comfortable with the weight and mounting logistics. Each panel is heavy, and you'll need a sturdy racking system to handle the load. If you're trying to bolt these onto an old RV roof or a flimsy shed, you might run into structural issues. Another thing to consider is the residential clean energy credit. Renogy's highlighting that you could qualify for up to a 30% tax credit if you install this as part of a full PV system. That's a solid financial incentive, but it only matters if you're actually planning to connect to the grid or have a setup that qualifies. If you're just powering a shed or a tiny home, the credit won't apply, and you're stuck paying full price. So who should actually buy this? If you've got a large south-facing roof, a light-colored surface underneath, and the budget to handle the weight and installation, these panels could be a smart upgrade. They're also worth a look if you're tired of dealing with partial shading and want a system that keeps working even when part of it gets blocked. Who should skip it? If you're on a tight budget, these are overkill. You'd be better off with a smaller monofacial system that's easier to install and still meets your power needs. And if your setup is in a shady or dark area, the bifacial advantage disappears entirely. The biggest trade-off here is the upfront cost versus long-term flexibility. You're paying a premium for the bifacial tech and the dual-zone design, but you're also locking yourself into a heavier, more complex installation. If you're not ready for that commitment, it's better to start smaller and scale up later. Bottom line, this Renogy system isn't for everyone, but it's one of the few bifacial options that actually delivers on its promises if you've got the right conditions. If you're still unsure, check the link in the description to see the full specs and decide if it fits your setup. Otherwise, you might end up with a lot of expensive roof art that doesn't save you as much as you hoped.